Hi guys, Julia here from JM Squared Vintage. Welcome back to the channel. Today I am here with something a little bit different. So as resellers, sourcing is part of what we do. And there are a lot of ways to do it. Some people can have a consignment arrangement, which is fantastic. Some people do big pallets and buyouts. That is also fantastic. But for the vast majority of us, we are buying secondhand in different places. We're going to thrift stores, bins locations, estate sales, yard sales, op shops, rummage sales, all different things like this. But the general theme here is that we are buying secondhand goods. Though I know that for most people, the sourcing is the fun part, it can be super overwhelming. And when you're doing this as a business, regardless if this is a side hustle or if you're doing this as a full-time business, having some structure around sourcing and optimizing that process can have a huge impact on the health of your business. And let's face it, your mental health, because this is a ton of work. So with that being said, I sat down and took a little time and compiled my 10 best sourcing tips for resellers. So I hope that they help you. So whether this is your first day, you're a brand new reseller, and you're just dipping your toe in, this should be very helpful for you. But even if you've been doing this for years, there might be some tips in here that'll help you kind of clarify or tighten up part of your process. And as always, my goal here is to help you optimize your business, make it more profitable and more streamlined so you have more time to enjoy your life while running a successful business. But without further ado, guys, we have a lot to talk about. So why don't you go grab your notebook, grab a snack, grab yourself a drink. You know I've got my matcha latte. So sit back, relax, and let's chat about sourcing. We're talking a lot today about pretty much everybody's favorite part of reselling, the sourcing. But both you and I know that the real work comes in when it comes time to start listing those items. It's a ton of work getting all these items listed, but it's the critical part that can get this stuff sold. And probably the best way to ensure that you are getting more sales is to make sure that you are cross-listing all of these items on multiple different platforms. Using a cross-lister like Vendoo, the sponsor of this video, can make that task way easier. Once you have your listing made, it only takes a few additional clicks to get your items listed on multiple platforms. Vendoo has integrations with all of the top platforms out there like Poshmark and Depop and eBay and Mercari and Etsy and Shopify and Whatnot and Vinted and Grailed, and they're constantly working to add more to that roster. So no matter what it is that you sell, Vendoo takes the work out of listing these things individually on each platform and also managing your inventory across all these platforms. On top of the help listing, they also have a sale detect feature, which if something sells on, say, eBay, it will automatically delist it from every other platform you have it listed on without you having to even think about it or lift a finger. That is insane peace of mind for while you are out and about living your life. On top of the cross-listing, they're also constantly working on building out new features that help address pain points and friction points that we as resellers encounter along the way. For example, they have a bulk edit tool that allows you to edit up to 240 items at once from one screen. So if you want to run, say, a sale, or if, say, a platform updates something and you need to change something on all of your listings, you can do that from one screen instead of going in and out of each one. That's even easier than doing it on the platform itself. They also have an auto offer tool that allows you to send auto offers when somebody likes one of your items on one of the platforms. Having those offers running all the time and ensuring that the offers reach the buyers in a timely fashion when they are actually browsing, regardless of what I'm doing on my side, is a total game changer. And you can do this on all of the major resale platforms. Easily 50% of my sales, if not more than 50% of my sales, come from these offers. So when I say that this can be a game changer for your business, this can really be a game changer for your business. And they're constantly working to add new features that will make your life as a reseller easier and more efficient. And at the end of the day, when you're thinking about the investments that you make in your business, that should be the first criteria. Does it make my life easier? Does it make my business more profitable and more efficient? So if you are interested in taking your business to the next level, click the link in the description box down below and get started with Vendoo today. You can thank yourself later. Now, back to the tips. So my very first tip, and this is maybe the most important tip, is to start with a plan and go with guardrails. So the first thing you got to do when you are planning out your sourcing day is, where are you going? Are you doing a whole bunch of estate sales? Are you spending the morning yard sailing in a neighborhood? Are you going to a couple different thrift stores? Are you going to go and spend a couple hours in the bins? Have a plan A and a plan B. So like, say you want to go and spend a couple hours in the bins, but the bins are trash that day. What's your plan B? Where do you go to from there? If you're doing something like a yard sale day or an estate sale day, or you're hitting a bunch of thrift stores, like, sit down and plot this out on a map so you're spending the least amount of time in the car going from place to place. The last thing you want to be doing is like backtracking and spending extra time in the car. Like, that's time you should be spending sourcing. So the second thing to think about is, are you going with a budget? Say you're going out with $100. Great. Set yourself a hard limit. And maybe, because let's be realistic, you never know what you're going to find, maybe you have like an emergency fund of X amount of dollars. If you are somebody who struggles to stay on budget, get cash. Easy as that. You can get cash. If you feel more comfortable, you can put it on like a gift card, like a Visa gift card. And then that way, when you hit your limit, you're done. That's also a great tip when you go on vacation if you are somebody who has a hard time controlling yourself with souvenirs. Definitely not speaking from experience here. The third thing you want to think about here is, what is your goal for return on investment? So like, depending on where you're going, you're going to have a different scale. At least I have a different scale. Like, when I go to a thrift store, I'm looking for very different things than when I am going to a bins location. Obviously, I'm looking for high-end stuff in both locations, but when I go to a bins location, I'm absolutely picking up bread and butter stuff, but bread and butter stuff is not anything that I pick up at a regular thrift store, just because I know that that is the kind of stuff that I can get at the bins. So I always have like a minimum return on investment that I want to hit no matter what I pick up. And if you don't have something like this, I recommend that you sit down and you look at your numbers. Obviously, everybody's business is run differently. Some of you out there are like whatnot sellers and you do high volume with like low profit margins. Your numbers are going to look completely different from what I do. So for me, for example, I want, after fees, I want to hit a minimum of 3x my investment in every piece that I get. Like, when I go to the bins, that's not much of a concern, because for the most part, even the bread and butter stuff at the bins is going to be, somewhere between 5 to 8x return on investment. And when I say return on investment, if you are not familiar with that term, I'm so sorry. It's basically like, you put out X amount of dollars and you get back X amount of dollars. So for example, say we're going to do a hypothetical on Poshmark here. Say you go out sourcing and you buy something for $5 and you sell it for $25. After fees, you're going to get $20 for that item. That is 4x return on investment. So when I say ROI or return on investment, this is what I'm referring to. I always want a minimum of 3x return on investment. And generally when I'm playing in that space, it's going to be in that higher dollar amount. So it'll be like that higher risk, higher reward category. If I'm spending $25 on something, which I'm not afraid to do, I want to get, after fees, I want to be getting $75 for that item. And listen, if you live in an area where you have a lot of nice high-end stuff, but the sourcing prices are high, like, it's a higher working capital that you need to have, but that's absolutely a viable business model. It's very similar to somebody who goes out and buys something for $1, sells it for $4 and gets $3, right? So that's 3x as well. So it's the same thing, just on a different scale. It's what you're willing to spend in the location that you're at. So when I say go with a plan and go with guardrails, that's what I mean. Where are you going? What's the physical map of that day? And what are your return on investment goals that you have for the specific locations that you're going to? And again, if you are in a place where you have options, you've got a bins location relatively close by, you've got a couple decent thrift stores, you've got neighborhood yard sales going on, you've got estate sales. If you're in an area with choice, I would recommend sitting down and figure out the formula that works for you, depending on what kind of sourcing outlet you're going to. So every good sourcing day starts with a good foundation, and that's the foundation. So my second tip here is to figure out timing, because timing matters. And oftentimes, and this is specifically for the folks that are new in this world, this is going to take a little bit of time for you to figure out. Even if you've never really paid attention to it before, this is going to take a little bit of time for you to figure out, because it's going to require a little bit of observation and a little bit of sleuth work. So say you go to a bins location. When is it the busiest? When do they put out new bins? See if you can figure out these kind of things and plan your trips accordingly. I understand that for a lot of people, this is a side hustle and you work a full-time job and, you're going when you can go, and that is totally understood. Even within the time constraints that you have, see if you can figure out when the optimal time for you to go is. Say you work a 9 to 5, but if you go on Saturdays, it's an absolute madhouse. But if you're able to go on like a Wednesday night, it's nice and quiet. It might make more sense. You might make up just as much ground in 2 hours on a Wednesday night as you would in 6 hours on a busy Saturday. So pay attention to these things as you go, and you will start to figure out a picture. Like, everybody starts to develop their favorite places that they like to go. And as you go to these places and as you go to them more regularly, just take note of how busy it is, who's there, etc. Is there a specific day that your favorite thrift store pulls out old inventory and puts out new stuff like that. Also, very important to note, holidays and weekends. Like, this is like a little bit of a PSA. If you're somebody who has the luxury of going like midweek during the day, like I can go anytime I want, I will go out of my way to avoid going on weekends and hours when like a typical work day is not happening. Number one, it's gonna be more crowded at that point because there's just more people out in the world that want to go thrifting. So competition's going to be higher. It's going to be more crowded. It's going to be more frenetic. But more than anything for me, it's like I have the luxury of going whenever. I want to be one less person in the thrift store during the time when it's already going to be busier for those people who don't have the luxury of going at like 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. You know what I'm saying? So if you have that luxury of not going during weekends and nights and holidays, maybe stay behind and let the people who don't have open schedules get the fines at that point. Trust me, there is plenty of profit to be made in every thrift store in this country. You will find your profit. Let them have their slice when they're able to get in there. I've definitely forgotten about like school holidays before, and I've gone in there, I'm like, why is it so busy? Like, let the kids have their time in the bins. It's great. I love seeing kids in the thrift. I absolutely love seeing kids thrifting again. And at the same time, I don't want to be crowded by them. So I'm just going to stay behind on school holidays whenever I am aware that they are happening. And back to like the timing in your specific outlets. If you are not able to spend as much time there that you would need to kind of figure these things out on your own, ask one of the employees. I've never had an experience where I asked one of the employees like, hey, when do you guys put out new inventory? Or, what are your hours? When is it the slowest? When's the best time you think to come? Whatever. I've never had an experience where they've, told me to shove off. Right? Like, they've always been really kind and let me know the answers to my questions. So like, ask questions. Also, if you are going to a location frequently, it doesn't hurt to like have a good rapport with the people that work there. Especially at a bins location, that those employees deal with some stuff. They deal with some crazy stuff. All right, my third big tip is to commit to the time. Now, again, I'm saying this with a caveat of I know that a lot of you work 9 to 5 or you work like a regular schedule, and sometimes the only time that you can go is to pop over for an hour during your lunch break, and that's fine. Obviously, be very realistic about your specific timing, but if you can commit to the time. Sourcing for reselling is a numbers game, right? So the more time you are able to spend, the more likely you are to find great bolos, designer finds, whatever the case may be. It is truly just a matter of numbers. Like, I know a lot of you watch my hauls. I find a lot of great stuff in my bins locations, and don't get me wrong, like, I live in Los Angeles. Our bins locations are fantastic. Thrifting here is world class. But it's still a numbers game. There is no going to the bins and, staying there for 15 minutes and coming out with 50 great items to resell. I go in there, and despite the fact that I find really good stuff, even on my best days, I'm in there and I walk out with 50 items, but I have looked at probably 5,000 or 6,000 items. So even in a place like Los Angeles where we have incredible thrifting, it's still a numbers game, and it's going to be the same anywhere in this country, anywhere in this world. The other thing to think about, and this is something that I learned from my mom, who I always call, she's the original thrifter. One of the things you have to do is you can't just go once and expect to find the good things, right? You can't say, oh, I'm going to go thrifting today and find a couple of Doan dresses. Like, the thrift gods don't give like that, right? Like, it just doesn't happen like that. You have to go frequently. You want to commit to the amount of time, and you want to go frequently. Anybody I'm sure all of us know somebody whose entire wardrobe is thrifted. I can guarantee you that that wardrobe is a result of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of visits to the thrift. So you've got to commit to the time, both per visit, and you got to commit to the time in terms of frequency of visits. And you can tie that in a little bit with timing. So say you've got a place that you love it, you go there once a week, and you figure out when they get new inventory. So great. they get new inventory on Tuesday, you go there once a week on Tuesday, whatever the case may be. So like build your little schedule like that. You can use all these little clues to really optimize your time, right? Like if you can go to your favorite thrift store and know that it's new inventory day and get as much in 1 hour at that thrift store as you could going for 3 hours a different day of the week, why wouldn't you go when you can have a more optimized time at that specific thrift store? So yeah, commit to the time, commit to the frequency, and use the learnings in terms of timing that you've gathered from tip 2. And make sure you're constantly optimizing the time and the frequency with the things that you're learning as you go there. All right, my 4th big tip here is to be prepared. Sourcing and thrifting and digging through the bins, you're going to yard sales, whatever the case may be, this is all physical work. Is it working in the coal mines? Absolutely not. But make no mistake about it. Anybody who has ever gone through every dress on that high rack in a thrift store knows how your shoulders feel after just one store. So make no mistake about it, this is still a very physical endeavor. So the first thing you got to do is make sure you are hydrated, especially if you're going to a bins location and you're not super comfortable bringing your water in, which I totally understand. I personally don't bring my water in. You are probably going to be there for a couple of hours. If it's hot, you might be sweating. You want to make sure that you stay hydrated. And whether that involves, just drinking water, or if you're somebody who needs to have like an electrolyte supplement, make sure you have that on hand. If you're bopping from store to store to store, make sure you're drinking water in between. Stay hydrated. Very, very important. And also, this is like a little bit of TMI, but like, go to the bathroom before you leave. Now, if I'm speaking to women over 35, I don't need to give you this tip, you already know. But for those under 35, go to the bathroom before you leave, especially if you're planning on going out for a full day of sourcing. If you're going to a long day at the bins, they might have a bathroom that you are able to use, but you're probably not going to want to use that bathroom. So just go before you leave. 35 and over, you don't need that tip. You're already doing that. The other big thing, guys, and this might be the most important thing, is to wear comfy shoes. You're going to be on your feet for a long time. I say use the Disney World filter. If you would not wear those shoes for 20,000 steps a day in Disney World, do not wear them to the bins or to the thrift. You want to make sure you have arch support. You want to make sure that the front of your feet isn't being squeezed. So use the Disney World threshold. It has served me very well. I'm a Birkenstock girl. I've got winter Birkenstocks. I've got summer Birkenstocks. I've been a Birkenstock girl forever. I think I'm now on their 3rd wave of being in style. I will not stop wearing them when they are not in style anymore because I am all about that arch support. So wear comfy shoes. So my next tip here is to know the rules. And this is applicable for every kind of sourcing that you do, regardless if you are at an estate sale, if you're at the bins, if you're at the thrift store. Every location is going to have a different set of rules. Like if you're going to a bins location, I've never been to a bins location where you don't have the rules posted like right in front of you when you walk through the door. Take some time to read through them. They are usually different in every location. For example, here we've got a couple locations where you can take your cart in through the bins. We've also got locations here where you're not allowed to take your cart into the bins and you have to like either hold everything or keep it in a bag. Ideally, you can figure what these rules out are before you go for the first time. Like if you go to a location expecting to be able to have a cart with you, but you're not able to have your cart, that's gonna put a little bit of gum in your gears, right? So maybe if you're going to a bins location for the first time, you can hope that you can bring your cart through, but maybe have one of those IKEA bags like stashed in your car ready to go if you need it. If you are going to, say, an estate sale, usually an estate sale company will have rules posted at the sale. A lot of them will post it online before you go. And that can be anything from whether or not you're allowed to bring a purse in, whether or not you are allowed to film anything, whether there is a limit, what time you can get there, how many people are allowed in at a specific time. Now, these places are used to people coming for the first time, so usually it's pretty easy to just ask somebody and like find out, but do yourself a favor, and if there are rules posted somewhere, read them and follow them. Again, especially at a bins location, those employees deal with some crazy stuff, so like don't be the crazy stuff that they have to deal with, rules for life. My next tip here is to look at everything. You will never find the good stuff by doing like a cursory glance or a spot check. Like if you are in a regular thrift store and you want to find the good stuff, you got to look at every single thing along that row because you just never know what you're going to find. Like obviously you're going to see a group of things that you can skip over. You see a batch of 5 Gildan t-shirts that, whatever, that's fine. But in general, you want to lock in and go through every single thing on a rack. I always recommend, this is just my little pro tip because as I mentioned before, it is probably the most physically demanding. I do the dresses first because I'm usually the freshest when I just walk in. So my shoulders are fresh enough to go through all of those things. And then as I'm going through like the shirt racks and the pant racks and the sweatshirts and sweaters and all that kind of stuff, I can kind of like rest my arm on the top of the rack if I need to, but literally like go through everything. So if you're in a bin situation and you're able to, the way I like to do it is I'll kind of clear out a corner and then like one by one, I'll put things in the corner as I look at them and just kind of like work my way through that way. But like take the time to look at everything. It's funny, like when I go to the bins, I see a lot of like, I call them bins bros, the guys that are there for like the vintage t-shirts, the vintage Stussy, vintage concert tees, all that kind of stuff. It's very high competition in this area for that kind of stuff. And they are always the first out to the bins. And a lot of them just kind of like toss the bins because they know they can catch a glimpse of what they're looking for. They're not looking for every, like I would love to find some Asian provocateur, like bralettes, right? Like that kind of thing is tiny and would be hidden in a corner. They're looking for t-shirts and sweatshirts and Carhartt, which are all kind of bigger things. If you aren't looking for a specific kind of thing like these guys are, you really have to take the time to kind of like go through every single thing. Also know the little honey holes in a thrift store. I always say like everybody looks at dresses, everybody looks at sweaters, everybody looks at sweatshirts, jackets, etc. I always make sure that I take a look at sleepwear. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I have found like silk slip dresses that are actual dresses put in the sleepwear section because they look like a nightgown. Usually the sleepwear is going to be a little bit less expensive than the rest of the store, so that can be a real great place to find a sleeper hit for less than you would be paying if it was in the dress section. So I always check the sleepwear and I always check the bedding. Bedding is one of those things, and like I'm calling myself out here. I love finding bedding. I hate listing it. I hate it so much. However, bedding is super expensive and it is one of the few things in our lives that is completely inelastic. Like people need bedspreads, people need sheets. And like I have found Restoration Hardware linen duvets at a bins location. I have found great pieces in a thrift store. And like these things will sell for well over $100. So don't sleep on bedding. Also blankets can be really good. Blankets are like a little bulky for what I do. I'm working with a very limited storage situation, but if you are somebody who has the storage space, you've got a garage dedicated to your inventory or a storage unit or whatever, guys, don't sleep on bedding. But do make sure when you go, you are looking at every single piece. You just never know what's going to be hiding in between those two Shein, blouses. It might just be an Ulla Johnson. So look at everything. My next tip is that if it piques your interest, put it in your cart or put it in your bag. Plain and simple, if you decide to leave it there and think about it, when you come back, it might be gone. You can always put things back. So if you are going through the bins and you see something that you're like, oh, this is kind of interesting, I don't know what it is, it might be nothing. It might be, put it in your bag. Put it in your bag and put it off to the side. You can look it up later. You can always put it back, but at least you're not leaving it behind. If it is a treasure, if it is something that is special, you're not missing out on it. The amount of brand new bolos that I have discovered, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm discovering them for everybody, but like I'm discovering them for my own roster of brands that I keep my eyes out for. The amount of times I've discovered new brands for me in that way is, I mean, there is never a time that I go to the bins where I don't discover some new brand because I saw something, I thought it was special, it looked really interesting, I threw it in my bag, and I looked it up when I got it back to my cart. There is literally never a time that I go to the bins that doesn't happen at least once. So, like, hem and haw later, put it in your cart now. If you see it and you're interested, grab it. And that brings me to my second point in this same tip is to leave some time to kind of like cull your pile before you leave. So say you only have an hour to go to a thrift store, right? You're somebody who works 9 to 5, you've got an hour for your lunch break, you want to pop over to the thrift store. Don't go sifting through those racks for that full hour. Make sure you're leaving 5-10 minutes at the end of that time to sit there and go through everything that you've picked up. Make sure it's something that you want to buy. Make sure there's no damage on it. Make sure it's fitting in that kind of return on investment formula that you've set for yourself. Like leave yourself that time time to call at the end of every trip, be it at a yard sale, at an estate sale, at a thrift store, at a bins location. Give yourself the time to properly inspect everything and think about the investment you're about to make. And I promise you, if you are new and you feel like all of this takes too much time, I promise you, as you are out thrifting and as you are out to the bin, you will get faster at all of these things. You will hone your process as you go along. But these are important steps to take to make sure that you are not investing in inventory that is damaged or inventory that isn't going to make you enough money for the effort that it's going to take for you to get it, clean it, photograph it, pack it, etc., right? The best way to practice, the best way to hone your craft is just time in the saddle. My next tip here is to build out your survival kit. This is probably going to look different for each person just because we all have different needs, but the first thing that's on this list that I get a ton of questions about and I have definite opinions on for me is gloves. Now, I always have gloves on me when I go to the bins location. I almost never use them, but I do always have them on hand. Now, this is very much a personal thing for me. Some people are just skeeved out by a bins location, and that is totally cool. It's probably 50-50 in terms of who I see wearing gloves while I'm out at the bins locations around here. For me, I'm a very tactile person. Like, I do most of my finding with my hands, not necessarily my eyes. I feel cashmere, I feel linen, I feel silk, and that is kind of my first, that's when my spidey senses go up. But if you are somebody who, that kind of makes your skin crawl thinking about that, totally understood. Bring the gloves and bring a backup pair. There are on occasion sharp things in the bins, and I'm not talking like glass, but I'm talking you might catch a corner of a zipper or something and it might tear the gloves. So have a pair of gloves and a backup pair. And even if you're like me and you don't necessarily want to wear gloves while you're in the bins, bring a pair anyway, just in case. You may never wear them like me, but I'm happy that I have them on hand. And if nothing else, I feel the same way about just always having a Tide stick or a shout wipe on me. If somebody else that's there, who does wear gloves and that's just their preference and something happens to their gloves and they don't have a second pair, I can give them mine. But the other things in your survival kit you should have, obviously any medications that you might have. I always have gum. I always have hand sanitizer. Hand sanitizer is a big thing. I always have lotion because my hands get so dry because of the hand sanitizer use. I always have Advil on hand. That's just me, obviously, not doctor's advice. If you cannot take Advil, please do not bring Advil with you. But, if you're somebody who might get headaches because of a lot of particulates, maybe allergy medication. If you are somebody who is really sensitive to allergens, right? Especially if you're in a bins location, you're kicking up a lot of stuff. Tissues I always have on hand. Obviously water. Obviously hydration packs if you need them. I would get just a little, zipper pouch, something like this, where you can throw all these things in and just keep it in your car. If you need anything, you can run out to get it if you don't have it on you. So my next tip here, and I'm pretty sure I'm speaking specifically to the women, is take up space. I know a lot of us have the tendency to kind of let people go in front of us or be overly polite in times when you're kind of in a crowd, but especially when you're in a bins location or in a highly competitive estate sale, stand your ground. I'm not saying be a jerk. I'm not saying push people out of the way. I'm not saying elbow or anything like that, but if you're standing in a location and you're looking at something and somebody kind of reaches in front of you and kind of rudely does, maybe say, hey, you're in my personal space here. Just be polite about it, but stand your ground. Honestly, going to the bins a lot has taught me a lot about just kind of establishing my space. If it helps, this is something that's helped me quite a bit, is when I'm standing at the bins, I kind of stand with my feet a little bit wider apart. It gives me a little bit more, I feel a little bit more stable. It also makes me a little bit lower, which is kind of nice because I'm digging through bins. Again, it just kind of establishes my personal bubble space. Now listen, you can't get around it. You're going to be shoulder to shoulder with people when you're in a bins location, especially when they roll out new bins. If you're in a again, a highly competitive estate sale situation, you might be in the same situation, but just kind of own the space that you're in. Doing this has taught me how to do that. And I find that has rippled out to the rest of my life, which is really nice. Again, I don't want to say that I was raised that way, but especially women, we are raised to be polite. We are raised to be the peacekeepers. We are raised to kind of like, it's okay, you go in front of me. But, in these scenarios, having that kind of attitude and letting everybody else go in front of you is going to affect your bottom line. So if you are in a space at a bin, or if you are, at a section of a rack at a thrift store, or if you are at a section of a rack at an estate sale, and somebody's really like kind of elbowing in and trying to get you, like just kind of stand your ground. If you are somebody that is new to doing that, it's going to feel really weird. You're going to be nervous doing it, but I promise you, like, people will respond to the way that you treat your space. And I think you're going to be surprised at how that does happen. So just like take up space, like in this world and in your life. Take up space. You deserve the space, so take it. The more you do it, the easier it is. Let me, if you're somebody who's been doing this for a long time and you're like me, where this has kind of taught you how to do it, let me know down below, because I need to know that I'm not alone in this. And my final tip here, guys, is know when it's time to call it quits. I've become very in tune to my limit through doing this. Like if I'm going to the bins, I like to go as early as possible. Usually that's the least crowded time in a lot of the locations around me. And for me, I start to leave when it starts to get super crowded, especially in the summer if it starts to get really warm. Like I know that that's time for me to go. Likewise, if I'm out at a thrift store or if I'm out at estate sales or yard sales, like if I start to feel like I'm just not into it anymore, because you will hit that point of saturation. I don't know a single person who can take an 8-hour day and just thrift and thrift and thrift. You will hit that point of I don't want anything anymore. You're going to hit that. Know that that is the time to call it quits. You're not doing anybody any favors by staying past that time. If you had planned to do a full 8-hour day of thrifting and 4 hours in, you're just not feeling it anymore, go home, reclaim that 4 hours that you didn't spend thrifting, do something else, clear off the decks for another day so that you can go another day and get those hours in if you need that time to kind of fill up your inventory. And likewise, don't go thrifting if you're not really feeling it. If you wake up in the morning and you're just ugh, I don't feel like going to the bins, I don't feel like thrifting, whatever. Give yourself that grace to not go. You're not going to have a good time. This is fun. We should all be having fun while we're out sourcing. Again, for most of us, the sourcing is the most fun part of this job, the treasure hunt, right? We love hunting for treasure. There's a reason that I make hauls. There's a reason that we all watch hauls. We want to see the treasures that people find. That is the best part of this. So if you ever have a day when you wake up and you're don't go. Do something else that day. Figure out another day that you can go when you're feeling more into it. And on the other flip side of that, if you wake up someday and you're I want to go to the thrift. Go to the thrift. I think most of us have days that we plan to go thrifting, and that's great. And usually we feel fine going, we feel fine coming home. Every once in a blue moon, I'll wake up and I'll have something else planned for the day, but I'll be oh, I want to hit the thrift. That happened to me just this week. And that's rare because I do go sourcing on a pretty regular basis. But I just woke up one day and I was yeah, today's a thrift day. And I went and I found some great stuff. So when the urge hits you, go. But if you're waking up in the morning and you're not feeling it at all, don't go. I firmly believe that your energy attracts what you find. So if you go there and you're miserable, you're not going to find good stuff. Your vibes matter. That might be a little woo-woo of me, but I really do feel the vibes matter when you are outsourcing. But mostly if you are out and about and you're sourcing, know when to call it quits. Be kind to yourself in that sense, right? We got to take care of us. It's a fun job, but it's hard, and it's a lot of work. So give yourself the grace to source another day if you're just kind of at your limit. But that is it, guys. That is my 10 top tips for sourcing, no matter where it is that you do your sourcing. I talk a lot about trends and I talk a lot about fashion and brands and all that kind of stuff in all my other videos. But, sometimes I like to get into the nitty gritty of the actual operations of what we do. And sourcing is a big part of it. And again, a lot of us have been doing this for years, but there's always little ways that we can kind of optimize our processes. And every time we do that, we make our businesses better, more profitable, more efficient. In the product development world, there's a term that we call continuous improvement. And it's something that I take into everything that I do. I'm always kind of low key looking for little patterns or little things that I'm noticing that are ways that I'm optimizing or ways that I can optimize. And anytime I find stuff like that, I will always bring that to you. So a cheers to the continuous improvement of all of our businesses and reselling as an industry in general. So guys, I hope this was helpful. I hope you have fun. If you did, please consider leaving a like or a comment on this video. If you have any tips from your sourcing, put them down in the comments down below. Let's help each other out here. Of course, don't forget to hit subscribe. I would love to have you along on this journey. But without further ado, guys, I hope you have the most beautiful week. Happy hunting, and I will see you all